Anyway, but we want your opinion on this because Ted and I are been going round and round on this, and we are now getting very serious in our plans. I don't want to give too much away here, but I do have, Ted has a plan. I have a plan. Should things go completely fascist on us, which could happen, it seems to be happening that quicker and quicker. We both now have plans for as quick an exit as we can possibly have of the United States. And our question to our listeners, to our viewers right now, you can also comment on YouTube, is there's three prongs to this question, right, Ted? A, are we talking out of our ass? Are we just like being really, really, shrill?
Yeah, someone in the YouTube channel accused us of being fear mongers.
Okay, well, there's that. I don't monger fear. I just feel it. But okay, you can call it what you want. So one answer is you're being foolish. You're being like some Hollywood effete, bullshittery. I'm going to leave the country if the person I don't want.
Alec Baldwin in every election.
Who has never left the country, by the way. Well, yes. He's busy shooting people on set, but that's something. So the other
making new children that for some reason.
I can't imagine. I mean, dude, I'm going to be 66 next month. I can't imagine being a new dad. I would just be like, that's fucking nuts. Anyway, so the second part is, like I said, first one, we're just overreacting. Two, wait and see, or C, get the hell out now while the getting's good.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, right, like, is it 1933? I would say for some people it is. Certainly for
if you're a person of color, if you're here on a visa,
undocumented people, people on tourist visas, left-wing people on visas. Obviously, as we've seen in the case of the Columbia student Mahmoud Khalil, I should say Columbia graduate. He graduated with a master's degree in December. He's now in a Louisiana private gulag. He has a green card. And there's been some cases of apparently like some of the Venezuelans who were deported with the alleged gang members. They were not even members of gangs at all. They were law-abiding, green card holders or tourists, or they held visas. So they've all been, and the Trump administration actually went into court. The judge said, in one particular case, this gay hairdresser who's made headlines, so you're admitting that you did not, this was a mistake. You should not have deported him. Yeah, that's right. So can we get him back? Nope, it's too late. There's nothing we can do.
Where is he?
They don't know. He vanished into this.
Can you imagine?
Apparently they don't keep a head count at the Salvadorian mega prison. They don't really know exactly who's there, is the official story. It's just sort of like, in you go, and then there's not even a computer where they, or a piece of paper where they know Scott Stantis is in there.
Well, that should scare the hell out of people. But to the point that Ted and I have made several times on this podcast, I haven't heard that many people get that pissed off, really. In fact, my conservative friends I was talking to one this morning and was like, well, should they have due process? I mean, if they're here illegally, I go, yes, that has been,
let's put it this way,
decided several times.
Okay, so let's just say for the sake of argument that anyone who's here illegally should be deported. The purpose of due process is to find out in a rational way, are they here illegally, right? I mean, so they're literally deporting people, and they're not, and some of these people were here legally. And so it's kind of like, that's the purpose of due process, is to find out exactly what's going on, and then to determine whether, what the law says ought to be done, if anything. So that's why due process is important. You can be, I don't understand people who consider themselves to be like hard on crime, who are against due process. Being due process doesn't make you a soft liberal. It just means that you just want a system that determines the truth. That system can be a right-wing conservative system, but you want a system. Without due process, you have no system. It's exactly. At all. It's when those systems fall apart for those people, which nobody gives a shit about, really. Come on, let's be clear. Yeah, nobody cares.
No, nobody in the United States cares because it ain't us.
And you can tell that nobody cares, including people on the left. Why? And I've had several people on social media yell at me about this because there's no left. And they're like, well, I exist. It's like, yes, I exist too. But as loud as I am, and no matter how many podcasts I do, I cannot fucking or personally do anything to stop this from happening. You need a left-wing organization, a left party, a socialist party, a communist party, a left libertarian party. You need a big popular front. The kind of, when you see these mass demonstrations in France, whether they're on the right or on the left, they are organized by massive trade unions and political parties that are aligned with those trade unions. They don't just happen because someone posts something on Facebook, hey, let's not buy anything on Friday. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and speaking of France, real quick, and I think this is relevant. Le Pen now has been charged with a crime that allegedly happened 10 years ago. Convicted 10 years ago, right?
Of embezzling EU funds, yeah.
Is it true?
It's kind of like probably, yeah.
Okay. So she is now banned from running for any office anywhere ever forever in France, which this is coming from a centrist government with Macron. And I mean, if they're pulling this kind of bullshittery and using the law to block out a significant political opponent.
Well, she's not a political opponent. She's literally she's the front runner.
Is she
she's the front runner in the presidential race.
So given that, let's move it back to the United States. We are in the same position. We are going to see due process get waived more and more. We have an executive branch of the government that is now saying more and more that they will not listen to nor abide by judicial decisions they don't like. When those decisions do come down, President Trump has said that the judge should be impeached. All of this is to say, I'm coming back to the question, should we leave now? Should we wait? Or are we overreacting? I don't think we're overreacting, Ted. I think you and I know history enough to see these trends, and the Trump administration in its haste has moved up to that edge very quickly. And fascism and fascist tendencies, fascist movements are called movements for a reason. They're not old-fashioned, political parties. They move quickly because that's part of what makes them a fascist movement, is that it's exciting. No one could ever say that these first few months nothing has happened. Lots has happened. We expect more to happen. This is keep the masses entertained. And if you voted for him, you're probably pretty psyched about some of this stuff. So the question is, what are the odds, right? I mean, when you're trying to determine, whether you should get on an airplane or not, you kind of try to figure out what are the odds of this plane falling out of the sky and be, dying on this plane. Pretty low, so you get on. And so the question now is, what are the odds here? I'd say, I asked Grok, the AI, what are the chances of fascism in the U.S. By 2028? Obviously, Grok is just AI. It's not it's not the Oracle at Delphi, but it said 20%. I'm like, I kind of think 25% is about right. And if you think, okay, well, on the other hand, 75 to 80% chance everything will be fine. Okay, fine. So, but let's just say you smoked and your doctor said, well, if you in 4 years you're going to die of lung cancer, 25% chance unless you quit smoking. Would you quit smoking? Probably. You'd certainly try. I think long and hard about it, because even though your odds would be pretty good, but the downside sucks so hard that you're kind of so the downside of fascism, more for people like us than for for political commentators than other people, would suck hard. Well, yeah, and I would say more to your point. I mean, maybe an even better metaphor. See, we're cartoonists. That's what we do. Is if you were getting back to your airplane, Ted. If you were getting on an airplane and the stewardess said, "There's a 25% chance this plane will crash," what would you still take the plane?
I'd be like, what's the fuss? I'm taking the bus.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, Ted, are we ready to leave? Because you and I are very much on the same page on this issue.
Well, I want to, before I answer that question, I
Okay.
want to sort of mention some of the high profile people who've decided to leave. So
Not Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin's still here, alas. His presence might be a good reason to leave, actually. But Jason Stanley, who's a professor at Yale and an expert on fascism, he's wrote the book How Fascism Works a few years ago. He pointed to like what happened at Columbia University with the way that they, I heard him talking about this on NPR. He has kind of a dark view. He's Jewish. I didn't realize this. And apparently he went to the high school where my mom taught in Ohio. So he's a fellow Southwestern Ohioan, a little younger than me.
Did he know your mom?
I don't know. I have not reached out to him. But Professor Stanley is leaving Yale. He's going to the University of Toronto, which I'm sure is an excellent school, but obviously it's a downgrade in terms of prestige anyway. And he says that he's scared and he thinks that the Trumpies basically are trying to gin up they're using fake anti-Semitism. In other words, the idea that there's anti-Semitism is rife on American college campuses, which clearly was a lie and not true. But to try to generate real anti-Semitism by people who say, fucking Jews, like, look at what they're doing. They're controlling everything. And I mean, I think that's happening. I don't think it was like this three-dimensional chess thing that Trump was playing. I think that's just the effect of what's happening. And so he's worried about anti-Semitism, ironically caused by people who claim to be fighting anti-Semitism. I'm not sure I buy that, but his hypotheses. But he is leaving. But he is leaving. He's going. Yeah, but at Toronto, they're going to give him like a lot of resources. So that's also got to be kind of appealing. He compares the U.S. to Germany in the 1930s and early 1940s. So he says he's gone. Nick Denton, who was the publisher of Gawker, is gone. He went to Budapest. He says that it was because of Trump. Michael Moore, my former neighbor here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, is off to Ireland. He says that he can't live here anymore because of Trump. I know a friend of a friend is moving. He's leaving. He says he can't live here anymore. Tech entrepreneurs, Elon Musk's former partner, the musician Grimes, is gone off to New Zealand and Ben Shapiro, who is of course a militant Zionist, is off to Israel. So he's literally going to where he feels safer, Israel.
I'm sorry, that
one might be that one to me is the bold-faced one. I'm thinking might be just dodging, trying to dodge another libel judgment like the one that he faced in the Hulk Hogan case. But
we have closer to home, closer to profession. We have Scott Meyer, who does the comic strip basic instruction on Go Comics. Truly one of the funniest cartoons. It's really one of the few ones I read because it's genuinely funny. He has recently moved to Portugal. Steve Greenberg, editorial cartoonist, freelance editorial cartoonist at the moment, has announced last week that he's moving to Mexico. I have been talking to a lot of friends off the record, and a lot of editorial cartoonist friends, as you might imagine, are all saying where do we go? What's the signal? When should we leave? Ultimately, that's what we're talking about.
Leave? I mean, let's face it. It's like, it's not really easy to just, other countries aren't like the United States. They guard their borders. So like you can't just like walk into, Canada and say, hi. So, you have to, if you're like me, you're very lucky. I have an EU passport due to my ancestry. I can just leave. Other people have to see if they can rely on their family history to maybe pull strings that way. Other people have to apply for political asylum or try to buy their way into some country that has a loose immigration policy. It's not that easy to leave, right? But then there's the question of like, assuming you can and you can afford it, because moving overseas is expensive.
Yes.
And of course, could you make a living, right? That has to, you and I, we could do the same exact thing from overseas if we needed to. But like, and a lot of people post-COVID they can work remotely. There might be a time zone difference, but whatever. I guess the question is it's less about whether, should I stay or should I go now? But the question really is it, how scared should we be? And what does it say about the country that people are seriously now doing this?
The number of people leaving is at record numbers. This has never happened in the United States before. Like we said, we've had the bullshittery. If Reagan's elected, I'll leave. If Obama's elected, I'll leave. None of that ever happens. This is happening. And I think that
what is it about this moment that's different?
Because we see the erosion of civil liberties. First off, if you have an IQ above room temperature, you see, we just talked about it. The suspension of due process, the executive branch ignoring legal precedent. Those are two very, very, very troubling instances. You also have a legislature we've never seen one that is this compliant to an individual as the House and the Senate are currently with their Republican majorities to Donald Trump. We've never seen anything like that. We've never seen anything like the Congress not fighting for its own rights in terms of controlling purse strings. You have the president saying, I'm going to defund this. And, the courts are the ones who are stepping up saying, you can't do that. And, in the instances of deportations, this administration has said, fuck you to the courts. We don't care. How many, was it Stalin who said, how many divisions do the courts have? Whoever had said something to that effect. That's where we are right now. Now, are they going to go after Ted and I specifically? Not at the moment, but the fact that if you are here on a green card and you had the temerity to exercise your First Amendment rights, yes, you have First Amendment rights the second you step foot on American soil. Just a reminder, people.
Yes, you do. Although the question is, you have to get a court to enforce them. Yesterday, the New York Times, I think it was yesterday, it might have been the day before, but in the last 2 days, they published a piece, a very serious sort of like, hey, if you happen to travel overseas kind of piece, advising even U.S. citizens to completely power down their cell phones when they arrive at U.S. ports of entry. Because even ICE has been asking even U.S. citizens to get into their phones. Now, part of the problem is a lot of people use an app, right, to scan the app to get into passport control. So I don't know how that works unless you just use your paper passport. But the worst that if you're a U.S. citizen, I mean, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but they can just arrest you and send you to one of these Salvatorian prisons, and then say, and then the remedy for that is that someone misses you and goes to a judge, and eventually they try to get you back. But they can sort of say, while we're trying to figure out, if this person's really a citizen, they can kind of pretend not to know and just sort of disappear you. But more likely, they would just delay you there while they try to get into your phone. And if you say no, if you power your phone completely off, then usually you have to put a passcode in order to, you can't facially recognize. I would not allow, border people,
hell no,
to get into my phone. We have a friend who is a cartoonist and a left-wing activist. And she told me that she was on several occasions arrested by local police, and they had some gizmo, and this was years ago, that they used to drain her phone, when they arrested her, and so to upload all of the data into a national computer. And so I'm sure things are worse now, and I'm sure the feds are worse than the local yokel police officers. So, I mean, you have to be thinking about, when you leave the United States, even if you're a green card holder, you really have to think twice about whether you want to travel overseas. You might not get in. You might not be. And in fact, right now, there was a report in today's New York Times about how the State Department under Marco Rubio is going through student visas and just deleting them. And they're not even notifying the person whose visa it is that they're no longer authorized to stay in the United States. They're just, God. And so if they, God. And then there's just so they're unknowingly illegal in the U.S. and they can just be arrested. We have all these cases of students who are on the lam trying to keep one step ahead of ICE. It's obviously, I mean, the issue here is that the courts have been telling the Trump administration they can't do this, and it doesn't matter because they just do whatever they want.
So is it time?
I don't know. I mean, that's the answer. I don't know. I feel like, and there's a question of patriotism too. Like, are you abandoning your country if you flee? And do you owe it to your country to try to stay here and make it better at a time like this? I mean, if everybody just like up and went, then only like the fascists would be left behind, and you've lost the country. On the other hand, do you sacrifice yourself on the funeral pyre of democracy in a society that doesn't really seem to care that much about democracy?
Yeah, not until they care. I'm sorry. I'm selfish enough to say, no, not unless the other people are willing to stand up with me, then I'm not going to stand up and protect them. Why, if they're not going to protect themselves. I do think that, listen, if you're going to leave the country, and frankly, I'm really very much on the fence right now. I'm stuck for personal reasons. But those personal reasons aren't going to last forever. And when the opportunity presents itself to leave, I'll probably leave. And it's because I can leave now. There's a chance you can't leave later. That's a consideration.
It's a major consideration. I mean, you think about there's like, American Jews, you meet a lot of them here in New York, and you're like, oh, when did your family come here? A lot of them are like, 1936, 1934. Nobody's family came after 1938. It just wasn't possible.
No, you couldn't leave. You could not leave. Then, so I don't want that to happen, obviously, to us. But I don't also, do you want to stay in a country where it's a very significantly, profoundly different country than you and I grew up in, Ted? I mean, it was flawed. It was not perfect. It wasn't kumbaya. We weren't all besties. But it wasn't this. It wasn't where, our democratic institutions were just like, somehow they became elastic, that.
I think this always, I got to say, you're right. It's also true that we all knew this could happen anytime, right?
Yes.
I mean, in a way, it kind of bugs me. It's like, if you think of the American system as like a machine, and that there's like things that there's parts of this machine that are subject to failure, but you're like, we could modify this, but we just never will. And then it breaks. And you saw it coming, decades earlier. I mean, in a way, didn't it fail really from the start? I mean, you kind of like it's sort of like American presidents until FDR. It was kind of like a gentleman's agreement. Nobody runs more than twice. There's no rule against it. We just don't. We know what the right thing to do is. Yeah, but what if someone doesn't know the right thing to do? Yeah, we just always do the right thing. And it's like, until some asshole's like, I'm going to run for a third term. And it's like, and now, you have that, like, you have a constitutional amendment. Okay, we have a rule. Okay, we had to put in a rule because we had FDR was a dick, and he ran not only 3 times but 4 times. He was a dick. He used the war as an excuse. Okay, fine. We have a rule. So then Trump's like, I think he's funning, but like, let's say he's not. It's like, well, I'll do an end run. I'll run as vice president, and Vance will step aside on January 21st, and I'll be president again. The point is that, like, if things rely on a gentleman's agreement, or like, say, abortion rights relies on some flimsy case law, like, you haven't really addressed the problem, right? You don't really care. Like, you don't really care about abortion rights. You don't really care about. I guess my whole point is, they knew this could happen, and they didn't fix it ahead of time.
No, because no one saw this coming. But you touched.
They did. I mean, lots of people saw it coming.
Well, the founders or the writers of the constitutions knew that this was a possibility. They didn't know that this extreme. I mean, this reminds me very much of there's a book. It's it's like a 250, 200 page book called Rubicon. And it talks about the end of the Roman Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating only because the attitudes were so much like you just described, Ted. Roe v. Wade's going to be around forever. Why? We don't need to codify
settled
that.
law.
It's settled law. we don't need law. And then, in Rome, it was a republic. We vote for our representation. Of course, you had to be moneyed males, so it wasn't inclusive, but it was by their standards very democratic, and they really held themselves up as, I'm a Republican. This is what we are. This is intrinsic to being Roman. And who's that guy crossing the river?
Right.
And just how fragile those types of ideas are, and just how fragile democracy is. I mean, you and I have wailed for years, Ted, about poll after poll after poll after poll that has shown that 60% on either side of the political spectrum think that the First Amendment should have stronger restrictions on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that tells you.
And I both know nobody likes the other side's free speech. They only like their own free speech.
Yes. So, when you have,
we're seeing it now on college campuses, right? I mean, like, college campuses are the perfect, what's the word? Crucible for this, right? I mean, like 20 years ago, if you went and gave a speech at like Columbia, you'd probably be shouted down by some lefties, like, shut the fuck up, boo, and you wouldn't be able to talk, and you'd have to leave. Now it's like pro-Palestine students are, expelled. They have their diplomas revoked, their student organizations. When you find yourself banning a group called Jewish Voice for Peace, you probably should ask yourself, maybe I need to do something different. Maybe
we ought to check this trend just to see if,
Yeah.
So where are we? I would say, well, I'm clearly not. I'm still here in the United States, even though I've got the Lithuanian flag behind me. It's actually a medieval Lithuanian flag. I would say it's going to be like porn. Ted, I'm stealing a line from Ted, by the way, but it's like the Supreme Court's view of porn. We'll know it when we see it. We know when the time will be right. And it may be that, one DMZ America podcast you'll be watching, we're in our nice little comfortable studios here. And the next one, we're in a cave, somewhere in Romania.
It might just go something like this.
And you just see guys with like windbreakers that say ice on the back.
Or not. I mean, they don't even wear that shit now. So they come in an unmarked car. They refuse to provide their names. They don't wear uniforms of any kind. They don't have badges. They don't show.
So if they come to your door,
card, they literally, I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, okay. I'm going to put it out there. As far as I'm concerned, if you shoot one of these people or all of them, you're not doing anything wrong. If I was on your jury, I'd be like, vaya con Dios. I mean, it's like, how are you wrong if you shoot someone who's trying to kidnap you and they don't identify themselves as a government official?
Yeah, precisely. They need to show identification. They need to show a warrant. Again, due process. I mean, that's
just procedural. I mean, if you're an illegal immigrant, okay, fine. And also they lie. They say we're the police. They're not police. This is an administrative procedure. If you're at home and ICE knocks on your door and you're as illegal as shit, you don't have to open your door. You do not have, they can't come in unless they have a warrant from a judge, which is very hard to get to search your home. So you can just tell them to fuck off. You make fun of them through the door. Probably not a good idea, but
no, probably
just
not.
Don't answer. Do not answer.
Well, that would be my advice to people, is that if they don't identify themselves, you don't let them in the door.
And don't say anything. Don't cooperate. I mean, I think about Mahmoud Khalil. He thought he was dealing with human beings. He was actually dealing with ICE people. And like he sent his wife upstairs to get his green card. They didn't. And you hear on the one of the ICE goons on his phone, like, "Oh shit, he has a green card." It's like, "Oh well, take him in anyway." So they didn't know, right, that he had a green card, that he was a permanent resident, that he had married an American woman. So basically they're whatever. But like he shouldn't have sent her upstairs to get the card, really, with the benefit of hindsight, because they took it. Like, just think if like they have him, but they don't have his card, right? Like if she'd had that card, she could have like gone on every TV show waving that card. I mean, that would have been very powerful.
Yeah, but I mean, well, they took him anyway. He couldn't have known that they would take him anyway. I mean, that's insanity.
I know. No, I'm sure he thought, oh, well, this'll, I'm a legal resident. They'll
yeah.
Because a green card is almost like being a citizen. I mean, basically, it's you can do everything except vote.
Well, clearly you're in the United States legally. I mean, first and foremost, that's what that says.
They've vetted you. I mean, in some ways, you're more vetted than anyone who's just born here. You can be born here and become like a fucking terrorist, but like, if you get a green card, they do check you out.
So, what would you say, Ted? Now, today is not the time.
Yeah, I don't think now. I don't think it's the time, but I think, I'm on super deep yellow alert. I mean, it's like, paying close attention. I think once they start, I'll tell you, once they target a U.S. citizen for political anything, that's when it'll be time. It's like, so for us, I mean, and the thing is, this is not to say that I don't care about what's happening to people like Khalil and these other green card holders. And for that matter, even the alleged gang members, who look terrifying, the Venezuelans, but their rights have been completely trampled over, and their rights are just as important as ours. Right now, this topic is just about self-preservation, and what kind of scaredy mice are we? I would say we probably are okay for now, but like for now, and that things are moving quickly. I mean, I would like to see all of this stuff stop due to political pressure, but between the Democrats and the feckless Democrats and the lack of a left, I don't see that changing. I think right now the Republicans are going to continue to run roughshod. Quick question for you, Scott. How do you feel about the party of, that you have always identified with most of your life? How do you feel about their behavior right now?
Oh, I'm disgusted. One of the reasons I became a Republican all those years ago was there was an intellectual basis, to all of this. There was thought. There was a reason to do and be and believe what we believed. That's gone away. I can't tell you. It would be difficult to codify precisely what a Republican is today, but things like liberty. I'm also strongly libertarian, but things like free speech, things like due process, things like institutions, rule of law, all of those were motivators for me to become a Republican all those years ago. None of that applies today. When you have a Congress that is, as I mentioned at the top of this podcast, has its power usurped and the separation of powers dissolved, and they seem just Jake with that. I have a problem. I have a profound problem with the Republican Party today. The Democratic Party, I don't know what the hell they are. Libertarian Party is about 50% Looney Tunes. So I try. And in fact, if you recall, we had Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate for president, on our podcast, and he was fantastic.
Yeah.
He was best.
He wouldn't be doing this.
Doing what? No, he would not be doing. No, he would not be doing this. We wouldn't. ICE would not be having its heyday. We wouldn't be.
Would Kamala Harris be doing any of this? Do you think?
Yes. Trump,
as aggressively, probably not. Right.
The Biden administration didn't have any serious problems kicking people out of the country.
Yeah,
in massive numbers. The Obama administration had no issues with that. At all.
But neither Obama nor Biden were trying to deport green card holders.
No, there was obviously some kind of, and there was some level of due process. It's nominal. Let's face it. It's if you've ever read about going through Ellis Island as an immigrant back at the turn of the 20th century, it was pretty weak tea, cough,
Yeah.
And if there's blood on your kerchief, they put you away for a while. Other than that, they'd say, "Where are you going?" I've heard of St. Paul. Okay, so you know anyone there? Yes.
He is Clovis.
He is cousin. Clovis Stantis.
Catus Aurelius.
And so, I mean, if you read, and I've read a lot of those, the guys who work, the journals that were kept, the books that were kept at Ellis Island. Up, you trying to show me there? Oh, come on, you can do it, Ted.
There he is.
There he is. Hey, Clovis.
My cat may have died.
When you have him stuffed, you can have him stuffed in that position. That'd be adorable.
The position of dignity. No, I'm going to make him like a bear, like roar, with glowing red eyes.